The first topic of our forum is integrating disaster preparedness in real estate development, with the real estate industry having the capacity to change the way Filipinos live. It is of consequence to know how being prepared for disaster is undertaken by one of the country's leading real estate development companies. Sharing with us this presentation is the president of SM Engineering Design and Development Corporation, Mr. Hans Chico C. Jr.
Hello, I'm Chico C. Thank you to the Manila Bulletin for inviting me to speak on this occasion. Just to introduce myself, I work for SM's Engineering Design and Development. We are essentially responsible for the development and modernization across the SM Group, especially our commercial facilities. Thank you for this opportunity to tell you how passionate we are about disaster preparedness and resilience. To be frank, this has always been an important part of our decision making. We have been at it for a very long time. We have imbibed disaster preparedness and resilience long before they were even considered buzzwords. SM is very aware of climate change in the way that it affects the Philippines and affects us personally. I have kids, so like everyone, I'm very concerned with what kind of world we will leave them with. In the same way, as a company, SM wants to make sure that the Philippines keeps growing and is a sustainable place to live in. I don't want to be the voice of doom and gloom, but of all the 17 UN Sustainable Development Goals, SDG 13, or climate action, has a clear deadline. The critical consensus, according to global experts, is that we only have until 2030 before we reach the tipping point. Beyond that, it will be a new normal of extremes: extreme heat, extreme precipitation, extreme winds, extreme everything, an extreme version of what we already experience today. Time is running out. We must really do something about this. As a group, we have determined our climate position to be the anchor for our climate action programs. We are prioritizing both mitigation and adaptation. Our strong focus on climate resilience means dealing with real, practical problems like reducing our vulnerability to typhoons, addressing water, energy shortages, and strengthening business continuity. Climate disclosures are also important, and we support a framework that allows us to design our climate action plans according to our material business needs to be more responsive to the Philippine context. Disaster management and risk resiliency are part of our DNA and way of life. In particular, our most significant innovations in sustainable development are in the design and construction of our shopping centers and properties. And we seriously put our money where our mouth is. Since 2006, we have been investing heavily in the integration of disaster resilient features in our developments. We have been allocating a significant portion of our capex in every project to incorporate disaster resilient elements in the mall designs for greater structural integrity and durability that have an impact of the communities we host in our properties. One classic example is the SM Mall of Asia, which was uniquely designed with a seawall to protect this area from potential storm surges or sea level rises. Built on reclaimed land, the mall uses a specialized foundation system to provide more robust protection against liquefaction and seismic events. It is also elevated above the required building levels by 4.5 meters and has a wave return and drainage channel to prevent flooding due to storm surges. Some of our properties were the first to be LEED certified in the Philippines. SM Aura is a LEED Gold certified mall promoting resource efficiency, green mobility, and green landscaping. The Conrad Manila, which gives you all the scenic views, is also a LEED Gold certified hotel. So now that we've determined our position, it can't all be talk. How do we contextualize and operationalize all these in SM? We believe in practical, flexible, realistic, and meaningful action. Let me remind you what these are in areas of two of the biggest concerns in the next decade. We are big on renewable energy. SM Prime Holdings is committed to deliver on its goal to increase its renewable energy portfolio to more than 50% this year. Partnerships are crucial here. Climate change is an issue we cannot resolve by ourselves. We recently announced a long-term deal with Aboitiz Power for clean energy supply. This long-term contract will power SM Prime properties, including our shopping centers, offices, hotels, and other establishments under the Retail Competition and Open Access, also known as the RCOA, by year-end. But what does it mean? It means that the private sector is very supportive in funding the energy efforts, the renewable energy efforts of our country. It means that through our agreements with the power industry and our continued build out of our rooftop solar power, we have a commitment to fund up to 160 megawatts of renewable energy equivalent to one medium power plant. That's like 1% of the Luzon power grid. It might not sound like a lot, like it's a single percent, but think about it from that context. If 100 other companies were to try, that would be 100% already. In that theory, it would be theoretically be able to fund the conversion of all power to renewable energy through that argument. Just to provide a more real context, is that SM Investments generates about $6 billion of revenue, which amounts to about 1.5% of the Philippine GDP. It's through that proportion that you can start doing the numbers and say, this does seem possible. So if the private sector were to seriously get into renewable energy, and yes, there will be some margin hits, but it is possible. We also know the value of water. There have been many discussions that water will be the greatest resource, second to oil in the next decade. Today, our sewage treatment plants have recycled a total of 8.8 billion liters of water, equivalent to over 3,500 Olympic-sized pools, lessening our dependence on freshwater sources for almost all our non-potable requirements. This means our air conditioning systems, our landscaping, our toilets, and other non-drinkable uses. We build rainwater catchments in our malls to harvest large volumes of rainwater, particularly in flood-prone areas. In doing this, our 22 catchment basins help communities to be flood-free, and we optimize water, which is, again, a very scarce resource in the future. This is not about us looking good. This is what SM is doing for all of us today and for the world. We really do care. We can't fix climate change with numbers because there are just too many places where it is happening, and we can't be in all these places all at once. But what matters is what we do, where we are today, and that things are simply done. We will definitely reach out to you so we can develop a common roadmap and agree on common standards that can measure our progress together. Stay tuned and be ready to answer the call. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Hans Chico C. Jr. Okay, let's get more in-depth insights on integrating disaster preparedness in real estate development. Let's begin. So, Sir Chico, the recent destruction created by Typhoon Paeng just showed how vulnerable we still are. There's only so much the private sector can do. What do you think should be the roadmap or the blueprint for creating a more viable solution going forward?
Typhoon Paeng, as I told my team, is not a singular event. As I always tell my team, this is already a way of life for our country. We can't change the fact that we are in nature's way of 20 odd typhoons a year. So the roadmap really for me is exactly what we've discussed before, disaster resiliency. You can't just change something because of one event. We must plan and prevent the things that have happening through good planning. And it's really that, because good planning, as any project manager or engineer will tell you, will prevent a lot of problems that happen. So with Typhoon Paeng and all this, we really have to study carefully, okay, what causes material damage? What causes all these suffering? And then ask yourselves, what could we have done before it? We can always have roadmaps for post-crisis. That's relief efforts, rebuilding. But the reality behind it is that it's really what we do before that truly matters. It's what really saves lives, not post-event. So the message and the roadmap for me is really that everyone has to be committed when they say, hey, we're ready. It's not about, oh, I packed my relief goods. It's about how did we actually design our buildings? How did we install the right elements to prevent these things from happening, or at least from these creating havoc to our environments when this happens, and it will happen. That's the unfortunate truth behind it. And I'm not trying to be a doomsayer, as I said, but it's just a way of life in this country.
SM is known to be big in using solar panels. But beyond solar panels and with your tie-up now with Aboitiz, are you looking at adding the likes of hydroelectric and wind-powered energy?
SM as a conglomerate has always been very true to its core values and its core activities. And unfortunately, power generation is not exactly part of our portfolio today. Um, but we do understand the requirement for renewable energy, which is why we have the commercial partnerships with Aboitiz Power. So we are we've sent a lot of messages to the power sector that SM is big on renewable energy. We will support a lot of renewable energy projects. So that is the way that SM really supports, whether it be hydro or geo or solar or wind. It very much depends on the power sector at that point. And we're very excited. I mean, there really is a lot of pipeline down the road for solar and wind. And of course, we're also recently SM did invest in a geothermal supply. So we do have some play in the industry, but not to the point where we are actually the ones generating power.
Now, the SM Green movement was just launched recently. It's been a call for stakeholders and the SM community, like tenants, homeowners, and consumers, to be more aware of sustainability. So, congrats on that. How is it doing? Do you think there's a lag in terms of public appreciating and being educated on sustainability?
The SM Green movement was an idea that really is key to everything that we do. We are literally still, in my opinion, at the start phase. If we talk about education, raising awareness in the buy-in phase, then we're probably in the middle of it. We're at the point where we're still gathering momentum. The important part, as you said, is education. And it's without us really explaining to people why they need to do the difficult choices in life that they need to do, then nobody will get it done. So the green movement, at the end of the day, at the very core of it all, is really about education. It's about telling our tenants, please segregate your wastes. It's about telling the customers, please segregate your waste. Because if all we do is, if we all we do is put the bins out and nobody actually knows what the bins are for, then it's just a waste of effort for all of us. And so I always challenge the team here. If we can get people to walk on the right, walk on the left, and stand on the right on the escalator, I'm pretty sure we can get waste segregation to an executable state at some point.
And there is also the Cash for Trash initiative that SM started. How has that been going?
That it's been going great, that one, because we already have a loyal following. A lot of people actually watch out for that, and a lot of people complain when it doesn't happen. So that's a good sign. People really do look for it already. And the Trash for Cash is a great program because exactly that. It allows at least some recyclable elements already to be taken out of the landfill system. But I guess the part of the green movement is really tying up with the government regulators and really starting to put some standards into place. So if we can really sit down with everyone and have a good practical discussion on what exactly is compostable, what exactly is non-compostable, what is recyclable, what is non-recyclable, then that's a big deal.
You were mentioning earlier SM Mall of Asia and how you elevated it above regular levels. How about in other SM malls, just like SM Marikina? Everyone knows it always floods in Marikina, right? So, what has SM done to try to mitigate the situation?
I always like to tell people, if you're going to put in a few billion pesos of investment into a location, then you're going to want to play it safe. So the most important statement that we always look at whenever we look at a new location is, what are our natural disaster risks here? Whether it be a flood, whether it be a volcano, whether it be, strong winds, typhoons, coastal surges. This is what I mentioned to you about frameworks a while ago. It is just super important to really have that great moment where we start to look at all these risks in front of us and ask ourselves as engineers and as project managers, okay, we know they exist, acknowledge it, right? Acknowledge that the risks exist. One of the big, I'm a big fan of, in my decision frameworks, right? Identify the problem so that you can actually fix it. if you don't identify it, there's a very common management mantra. If it can't be measured, it can't be managed. And so that's the mantra we take into our projects. We need to be able to measure and identify what these risks are so that we can actually plan and mitigate it. So you mentioned Marikina. We knew that the Marikina River has flood levels up. I mean, it's public data. So because of that, we knew, okay, we can't build it too low. It's gonna get flooded every so and so years. So that's why it's on stilts. The same with our Cabanatuan project. We knew that it was gonna flood. We also didn't want to impact our neighbors. So which is why we also built that on stilts, so that later on people can't say, oh, oh, SM did this or SM did that. We are very careful in looking at the 5 kilometer radius or even more to some extent and really ask ourselves, what is the actual impact of this physical infrastructure into this environment? And most times we actually look into how do we actually help this community even without asking for anything at the start. So for example, there have been many drainage systems that we have refurbished and redeveloped because it just makes it makes sense for SM to contribute, because if we don't and the area floods, then it's commercially bad for us. So it really is at the end of the day all about identifying your risks in front of you.
How supportive has the older generation been to these sustainability initiatives? Because at some point, it wasn't something that they would consider when creating their businesses.
I have to give full credit to the older generation. They're the ones who taught me this. So to give them full credit, they were the ones who kickstarted this whole mindset about disaster preparedness, because one of the things we value as a family managed company is that we see the full life cycle of our buildings. We not only build it, operate it, but we all, because we operate it, we see all the little issues that come with it. And so it is through that experience of theirs that they have been able to understand this from their perspective. And really, it's really been more of them making sure that the newer generation also continue that mindset. So to give full credit to them, it really started with them.
Once again, thank you very much, Chico, for your compelling insights on disaster preparedness. That was Mr. Hans Chico C. Jr., the president of SM Engineering Design and Development Corporation.